Hello everyone, and welcome to World War II at 80. I'm Ron May, your host, author, historian, and speaker on World War II history and the stories of those who served. We continue with our fifth episode today, which focuses on the events and stories of June 1944. The month of June began with the news of victory for the Allies in Italy, as the city of Rome was liberated from German control by the U.S. Fifth Army on June 4th. The attention and celebration were short-lived, however, as all eyes and ears quickly turned to Normandy, France, 2 days later, June 6th, with the announcement that the invasion of France had begun. Originally scheduled for June 5th, the invasion was postponed for 24 hours because of storms and rough seas in the English Channel. General Eisenhower made the critical decision to proceed with the amphibious invasion on June 6th, with the assurance from his chief meteorologist that there would be a slight break from the storms, allowing the landings. Every sailor, soldier, and airman leaving for the invasion beaches of Normandy received a letter from General Eisenhower as they boarded the plane or the ship that they were on. This letter sent them off with his best wishes and commended them and their cause to God. Engraved on the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. is an excerpt from that letter, which reads, "You are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle." The letter ends with the words, "Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking. Dwight Eisenhower." The Allied invasion force was massive, unlike anything that had ever been attempted before. There were just under 7,000 naval vessels and 12,000 planes used to deliver and support the landing of 160,000 mostly American and British troops launched from the English coastline. The C-46 cargo planes with paratroopers and gliders took off first in the early morning hours of June 6th. They took on enemy fire as they approached land. Of the almost 12,000 planes used on D-Day, 127 and their crews were lost. Those that survived the trip dropped paratroopers behind enemy lines to secure critical bridges and road intersections for the advancing troops that would soon be coming from the sea. Over 7,000 ships carrying 130,000 forces and equipment crossed the English Channel and headed toward the beaches of Normandy. The targeted amphibious landing sites were 5 invasion beaches along the Normandy coastline that stretched for over 50 miles. U.S. forces were assigned the 2 beaches on the west side of the invasion line, named Omaha and Utah. The other 3 beaches, named Gold, Juno, and Sword, were designated for British and Canadian forces, as well as a small French unit that joined the British in landing at Sword Beach. If you look at the map and move inland from Utah Beach, you see the location where the 82nd Airborne Division paratroopers were dropped, near the city of Carentan. And if you look on the far right, inland from Sword Beach, you see where the 6th British Airborne Division was dropped, near the city of Caen. On board one of those 7,000 naval vessels was John Welsh, who preferred the name Jack. Welsh was from Greenfield, Indiana, and was the engineering officer on board Landing Craft Infantry Large 517. He recalled leaving from England on the late afternoon of June 5th and receiving Eisenhower's letter and their orders after getting underway. His ship was loaded with 280 soldiers from the 1st Infantry Division. The orders were to drop them off at Omaha Beach. Welsh recalled the experience in a memoir he wrote later for his family. The beach was all ablaze. The first wave of LCIs, LSTs, and LCTs went in toward the beach at 6:30 a.m. The Germans had not yet been able to man their guns at 6:30, but soon they had their 88mm rifles trained on the beach, and they began hitting the ships and troops on the beach. Our flotilla of 36 LCILs headed toward the beach at 10:30. The ships would sail along in a column, and upon the signal to turn, we would all turn in toward the beach at the same time, like a right face, as if we were marching. As we got closer to the beach, the Germans were hitting more and more of our landing ships, so our flotilla was ordered to stop and unload into LCMs, which were much smaller and harder to hit. By then, we were probably within 150 yards of the beach, and shells were falling all around us. I remember the LCMs following along as we kept going. Thankfully, none of the ships in our group were hit, although we did see many more which were hit. Of the 5 beaches, Omaha was the deadliest and had the highest number of casualties, as the German forces there were well dug into the sloped ground that rose up from the beachhead, shooting down easily upon the advancing Americans. By the end of the first day, 4,414 men, 2,500 of which were Americans, were killed, and over 5,000 wounded in the landings. Those who fell on the shores of Normandy helped achieve a critical toehold in France, from which the Allied forces proceeded in the weeks ahead toward their objective of Germany. Landing on Omaha Beach on June 6th with the 29th Infantry Division was Morgan County, Indiana native Maurice Kent. Kent was drafted into the Army in 1942 and left the United States for England in May 1943. Just before Kent's unit disembarked from their ship, his lieutenant came up to him and named him the assistant squad leader. "We hit the beach at 6 a.m., Kent remembered in an interview. They, referring to the German forces, were throwing the lead right on us. There were 20 Jerries, a slang term referring to the Germans, on that mountain where we landed at Normandy," Kent said. Private Curtis Billy McGinnis of Eminence, Indiana, also survived the initial landing at Normandy. He was a standout basketball player for Eminence High School, and he also played at Indiana University 2 years before joining the Army in 1943. McGinnis earned a Silver Star for his heroics on June 17th while advancing toward the enemy near Montrevat, which was 10 miles east of St. Lo in Normandy, France. His award citation reads, "Private McGinnis was met by heavy machine gun and sniper fire. Refusing to consider personal safety, he unhesitatingly engaged the enemy and successfully covered the withdrawal of his men and, trapped by fierce fire, was unable to return to his unit." McGinnis remained in the status of missing in action for several months. He was finally declared dead by August. His Silver Star award was presented to McGinnis's father and mother at a ceremony that took place at Camp Atterbury, Indiana, in June 1945, a year after the hero's death. Normandy, France was not the only place Allied forces were landing during the month of June. 10 days after the landing at Normandy, and 7,500 miles to the southeast, Marine and Army forces stormed ashore on the island of Saipan on June 15th and 16th. The largest island in the northern Mariana chain, Saipan is 12 miles long and 5.5 miles wide. It was a key Japanese stronghold consisting of 30,000 troops and considered to be part of the last line of defense for mainland Japan, located 1,500 miles to the north. Herman Strakis, a South Dakota native and transplant to Indianapolis, took part in the invasion. He was a machine gunner with the 2nd Marine Division. A veteran of the Battle of Tarawa 7 months earlier, Strakis very nearly didn't make it off the beach. He had made it up to a sandbank and was taking cover from enemy fire when a Japanese hand grenade landed on the sand bank slightly above him. Herman had just a split second to turn his face into the sand and shield his head with the back of his hand. Thankfully, the explosion of the grenade went up and out, sparing Herman most of the impact and shrapnel. He received some cuts on his head and hands, but no serious injury. His life was spared, and he became a Purple Heart recipient for the wounds that he sustained. "Someone from our group got hit every day," Herman recalled in an interview. "We just bandaged each other up and kept fighting." Killing did finally give way to some forms of kindness as the battle drew down. Herman and some other Marines came across 6 women and children island inhabitants that had been hiding out in a cave. "We offered them what little we had to eat," he said. "We had only instant coffee, but nothing to really feed them with. But they would take that raw coffee powder and just eat the sack and all. They were so surprised and amazed that we didn't shoot them. After an hour of talking to settle them down while waiting for them to be handed over to other authorities, those people were almost laughing with joy that no one shot anybody. They had always been told that we would murder them no matter what, so they should never give up." Following their victory, the 2nd Marine Division set up a base camp on Saipan. Here the Marines lived, trained, and jumped off for more island campaigns. Carl Farrell of Martinsville, Indiana, also took part in the invasion of Saipan. He came ashore with the Army's 27th Division on June 16th. Farrell grew up in Mattoon, Illinois, and moved to Martinsville, Indiana in 2011 after retiring. He was drafted into the Army at the end of 1941, shortly after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Farrell joined an 81mm mortar team and was assigned the job of carrying the heavy base plate that the mortar tube fired from. "It was all right," said Farrell in an interview, "but it was heavy. 45 pounds, to be exact." "It was scary," Farrell recalled of landing at Saipan. "People were getting shot, and we saw dead bodies on the beach." Combat operations on the island lasted until early July, when the Marines and soldiers defeated the Japanese and brought the island under U.S. control. While the fighting raged on Saipan, U.S. Navy forces of the 5th Fleet were busy engaging Japanese naval forces 400 miles to the southeast in the Battle of the Philippine Sea on June 19 and 20. The battle, won decisively by the U.S. fleet, earned the moniker the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot for the lopsided victory, which included the loss of over 200 Japanese planes compared to 29 American planes shot down. In both the European and Pacific theaters, U.S. forces stormed into key enemy locations in June, from which their march toward Germany and Japan would proceed in the months ahead. Learn more about World War II history during 1944 and the stories of those who served in my World War II trilogy, Our Service, Our Stories, Volumes 1, 2, and 3. The books are available for purchase on my website, ronaldpmay.com. To contact me for questions or to schedule me for a speaking engagement, email me at ron@ronaldpmay.com. Also, be sure to check out all my other videos on my YouTube channel at World War II History and Stories with Ron May. Please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. See you next month for our Episode 7 featuring the events and stories of July 1944 in World War II at 80.